Imagine being told that everything you are is not enough, that your hands are too rough, your home is too small, and your dreams will never matter unless you become someone else. Great Expectations by Charles Dickens is the story of a boy who believes wealth will save him, only to learn that it almost destroys him. It is a powerful, emotional journey about growing up, losing yourself, and finally understanding what truly matters. Charles Dickens, the story behind the story. Charles Dickens was not born into comfort. He was born into struggle. As a child in Victorian England, Dickens knew hunger, fear, and shame. When he was only 12 years old, his father was sent to debtor's prison. Overnight, Dickens's childhood ended. He was forced to leave school and work long hours in a dirty factory, pasting labels on bottles while other children learned to read and dream. That factory never left him. Even after fame, even after success, the memory followed him like a shadow. And that pain, quiet, buried, unforgettable, became the heart of his writing. Dickens grew up in a world where class meant everything, where the poor were ignored, where criminals were treated as monsters, where a person's worth was measured by their accent, their clothes, and their money. He saw how cruel that world could be, especially to children. And so he began to write, not just stories, but truths. By the time Dickens wrote Great Expectations, he was famous, wealthy, admired. But instead of celebrating success, he looked back. He asked himself a dangerous question. What did ambition cost me? In Pip, he poured his own memories. The shame of being poor, the desire to escape it, the fear of becoming someone he no longer recognized. Pip's hunger for status was Dickens's own reflection, written with honesty and regret. Characters like Joe represented the goodness Dickens feared he had left behind. Magwitch carried the pain of society's cruelty. Miss Havisham showed what happens when bitterness freezes the heart. These were not inventions. They were echoes of the world Dickens had lived in. Great Expectations was not written to impress. It was written to confess. Through this story, Dickens reminds us that money cannot heal old wounds, that success does not erase where we come from, and that kindness, especially when given freely, can change lives in ways we never expect. Charles Dickens wrote from pain, from memory, and from truth. And that is why, more than a century later, his stories still breathe. Because they're not about the past. They are about us. Great Expectations, key plot points, and ideas. The story begins with Pip, a lonely orphan growing up in the English countryside. He lives with his strict, often cruel sister and her husband, Joe Gargery, a kind blacksmith with a gentle heart. Joe loves Pip without condition, but Pip does not yet understand the value of that love. One cold night, everything changes. In a dark graveyard, Pip encounters Magwitch, a desperate escaped convict. Though terrified, Pip feels pity. He steals food and a file to help the man survive. It is a small, risky act of kindness, but it quietly shapes Pip's destiny. Soon after, Pip is invited to the haunting home of Miss Havisham, a wealthy woman frozen in time. She still wears her wedding dress, surrounded by rotting decorations from the day she was abandoned. Inside that decaying mansion, Pip meets Estella, beautiful, proud, and emotionally distant. Pip falls in love instantly, but Estella mocks his rough clothes and simple life, making him feel ashamed of who he is for the first time. From that moment on, Pip believes one thing: to be worthy, he must become rich. When a mysterious benefactor suddenly grants Pip a fortune, he leaves Joe behind and moves to London to become a gentleman. At first, it feels like a dream come true, but wealth changes Pip. He becomes careless, proud, and embarrassed by the people who once loved him most. He believes Miss Havisham is preparing him to marry Estella, and that love can be earned through status. Then the truth shatters everything. Pip discovers that his benefactor is not Miss Havisham, but Magwitch, the convict. The man Pip once helped to spend his life building a fortune just to make Pip successful. Horrified and ashamed, Pip finally sees how empty his dreams have become. Yet instead of running away, he chooses loyalty. He risks everything to protect Magwitch, sitting beside him in his final moments, no longer judging him, but honoring him. Ending and resolution. In the end, Pip loses his wealth, his illusions, and nearly his life. Sick and broken, he is saved by Joe, the man he once rejected. Through loss and suffering, Pip grows into someone better than a gentleman. He becomes human. Years later, Pip meets Estella again. Both are changed by pain. This time, there's no pride, no cruelty, only understanding. Dickens leaves their future quietly hopeful, earned through growth rather than fantasy. Book review: Great Expectations by Charles Dickens. Great Expectations is a classic novel by Charles Dickens that tells the story of a young boy named Pip and how his life changes because of money, love, and ambition. Even though the book was written a long time ago, its message still feels very real today. The story follows Pip from childhood to adulthood. At the beginning, Pip is kind and innocent, living a simple life with his brother-in-law Joe, who is a blacksmith. As Pip grows older, he becomes unhappy with his poor background and dreams of becoming rich and important. He believes money will make him respected and loved. One of the strongest parts of the book is how Dickens shows the danger of chasing status. When Pip gains wealth, he also loses touch with the people who truly care about him. He becomes proud and ashamed of his past. This change feels very realistic and makes Pip easy to relate to, even when he makes mistakes. The characters are memorable and meaningful. Joe represents kindness and honesty. Estella shows how emotional pain can make people cold. Magwitch, the convict, reminds us that good hearts can be found in unexpected places. These characters help deliver the book's main lesson without feeling forced. The language can feel slow at times because it is a classic novel, but the emotions behind the story are strong. Themes like guilt, forgiveness, love, and personal growth are handled in a thoughtful way. The ending is not flashy, but it feels earned and meaningful. Overall, Great Expectations is a powerful story about growing up and learning what truly matters. It teaches that money and status do not define your worth. Your actions do. This book is a great choice for readers who enjoy emotional stories with deep life lessons. Final rating: 4 out of 5. A thoughtful and timeless novel that stays with you long after you finish reading. Books, if you enjoyed this summary, like the video, subscribe for more classic stories, and tell me in the comments.